segments that accelerate upwards while others consolidate under pressure, and the divergence that fundamentally reshapes advertising strategy and media economics. Mass narratives that are now giving way to segmented storytelling, and attention which seems to be scarce, and trust that seems to be fragile, consumers that seem to be more discerning, more digital, and more values-driven. Now, brands must communicate across multiple income realities without losing any coherence.
In fact, media organizations must also innovate continuously to remain trusted and relevant while navigating platform fragmentation and performance-driven metrics. In fact, the challenge now is to balance precision with purpose, scale with authenticity, and innovation with credible. On that note, may I please welcome Sir Martin Sorrell, Chairman of S4 Capital and founder of WPP. He is going to be in conversation with Mr. Madhukar Kamath. He is the Chairman Emeritus of DDB Mudra Group. Mr. Kamath, if you could please come up on stage.
Good morning and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Martin. Or should I call you Sir Martin?
Whatever you like.
Okay, because...
You can call me Martin and Neil.
Okay. You know, I heard the introduction, and I think they missed out on certain very interesting facts. Martin's been an India watcher, India traveler, India believer for close to 50 years. Not many people know that. And when I was counting the number of trips, even he's forgotten how many trips he had. He has about 45 times he's been to India and spent time in India, which makes him preeminently, and having built preeminent and dominant businesses in India, that makes him eminently qualified to answer any questions that any one of you might have. But today I'm going to hog the show. I'll have a few questions for him. We have just 15 minutes. So, Martin?
Flattering but inaccurate. You should be in advertising.
Martin, over the last 1 week, ever since you spoke in Bombay, people have been talking about the K-shaped growth in the media economy and the Oppenheimer effect. Okay, so in quick 2 to 3 minutes, can you highlight to this audience what the K-shaped
I don't do quick answers, but let me try. So. Okay. The market is $1.2 trillion this year. 900 billion is in digital and 300 billion is in traditional. The 900 billion is going up by about 15 to 20% a year. It's accelerated. You look at the latest Google, Meta, Amazon results, are going up quickly, going up 15, 20%. Last year was 10 to 15%. And it's worth going through the numbers so everybody understands, because in the introduction, they referred to media fragmentation, and I think it's going the other way. It's media concentration. Google this year will be 300 billion in terms of ad revenues. Meta will be 200 billion. Amazon will be about 70 billion, going to 100 billion. People used to laugh when I used to say Amazon will get to 100 billion, and it's well on the way. And TikTok, outside mainland China, probably around 60 billion. You add that little lot up, it's more than 600 billion out of the 1.2 total market, or out of the 900 billion, so over 2/3 is in 4 platforms. And if you added in Alibaba and Tencent, that's the game. You then drop down to Microsoft at 19 billion, Apple at 11, Snap at 6, Pinterest at 4, Twitter used to be 5, under Elon, X has gone to about 2.5, 3 billion. The point is there's enormous concentration. Those companies are also spending this year $600 billion, so that's more than $10 billion a week. Google on its own is $185 billion on data and AI, or AI data, infrastructure, energy. So huge concentration. This dominance is likely to continue. On the traditional side, the 300 billion, that's going backwards. The fight between Netflix and Paramount and for WBD, Warner Brothers Discovery, is an element of that. Traditional free-to-air TV is flat or down. If you have live sport, you go down about 0 to 5% a year in terms of ad revenues. If you don't have live sport, you go down by 10 or 15. So that's the one area, that's the real K-shape. The Oppenheimer moment is in relation to AI. The ability of governments to regulate AI, in my view, is gone. That's the Oppenheimer moment. The Oppenheimer moment being when we could regulate or control nuclear weapons. That's gone. These platforms that I referred to are really nation states. The head of MI6, a newly appointed, only speaks one time of year. It's now a woman, and in her first and only speech this year or last year, she referred to Tim Cook being president of a country. We've been saying this for 3 or 4 years. Alphabet is over 4 trillion. NVIDIA, I think, crossed 5 trillion briefly, over 4 trillion. $4 trillion is not as big as India if you conflate or equate market cap to GDP, but they are countries. If Elon Musk gets his way and gets Tesla to $10 trillion of market cap in order to trigger $1 trillion of compensation, which I think he will do by one way or another, that if everybody else stood still, Tesla will become the 3rd largest country in the world. US at 28 trillion, China at 18. India is around 5.5. So the Oppenheimer moment really referred to the fact, or the lack of it, that governments, regulators will always be on the back foot, always been trying to catch up. There is no way that the regulators can regulate these companies. The other thing to mention is this. For nation states to succeed, they have to do a number of things, but 2 things they have to do. They have to have strong military power, and they have to have strong tech power. And governments understand that. Just to give you one example. When Jack Ma got into trouble with the Chinese government on the flotation of Ant Financial, and he got in trouble with the regulator, you may remember that the Chinese indicated they were going to split up Alibaba up, I think, into 8 parts. It has not happened. Why has it not happened? It really signals, and you see this in Ukraine with Starlink and Tesla and Musk. You see it with Google. You see it with Microsoft in the Ukraine conflict as well. Big tech is essential for nation strength. So, as we look forward to India being one of the 3rd largest economies in the world by 2050, which I have no doubt it will be, and as the Global South, the next 11 and the BRICS 11 become economically even more important than they are today, and something the Americans don't understand, I think, and don't accept. But we will see that technological strength is absolutely critical for nation power.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Martin. Now, let's quickly move into India. India is often seen as an outlier in terms of growth rates, particularly compared to the sluggish global economy. How do you believe the development of the K-shaped platforms will matter in India, particularly because we have global brands, Indian brands, you have legacy brands, you have digitally created brands, and you have various practices that happen here.
Well, look, you referred to my age, and how many years I've been coming to India since the mid-1980s. And look, the world is a very different place. When in 1983, there was a famous business school professor, Ted Levitt, who wrote the article on globalization, consumers were going to consume everything in the same way everywhere. That age, if not over, has certainly been constricted or lessened. There are 3 big geopolitical conflicts that I think are intractable and will continue for a long period of time. US-China will be in conflict. Maybe in the short term there'll be some rapprochement when Trump meets Xi in a few weeks' time. But that will be a temporary palliative. I think, as an American ambassador said to us, as a delegation I was on, the relationship between China and America is structurally competitive. So that's one thing. Russia and Putin, very difficult to define his motives, but probably wants to recreate the Russian Empire of Peter the Great in one way or another. He will not stop with Ukraine, in my view. Thirdly, Iran poses, again, I think we're going to see maybe there are developments in the coming days, but it's an intractable problem. In that world, the world has become far more fragmented. Global companies in this room, regional companies, national companies, have to look at geographical development much more carefully than they've ever done before. North and South America, the Middle East, and APAC are the growth regions. Europe is under the gun. Africa is too volatile. You have to look on a micro rather than a macro basis. In that world, APAC becomes one of the centers. Because of the Taiwan risk, and I don't think President Xi will invade Taiwan, but he will certainly strangle Taiwan over time because it is essential to his legacy that Taiwan becomes time of China. That's non-negotiable. Because of that, India is the alternative in an Asian context. And therefore, if you're big in China, big is defined as 15 to 20% of your sales. So if you're Apple or you're LVMH and you've got up to 30% of your sales, do you want to take further risk? No. You diversify your supply chain, your supply, your markets, and India is the second solution. It's been referred to as before in the World Bank statistics. India was the fastest growing country last year. It will be the fastest growing country this year. It will be the fastest growing country next year. Prime Minister Modi has done an excellent job, in my view, of leadership and representing brand India. The president, prime minister of a country should be the chief brand officer, should be the emblem of the country and the driver of the country. So India, I think, is in the box seat for two reasons. In that fragmented world, picking growth is really important. India's growing. The second thing is, because growth is going to be more tempered, because inflation is tougher to deal with than people think, and we see that with central banks, and interest rates as a result are going to be higher than we've been used to, being efficient and effective is critically important. So applying AI, applying blockchain, if you think AI is big, stand by for quantum. I was exposed at the Google Zeitgeist last year to their quantum lab in Montecito in Santa Barbara. It is quite extraordinary the computing changes and capacity changes we are going to see, not just from AI, but from the implementation of quantum. India can play a huge role in that. One qualifier, President Trump wants manufacturing to go back to the US. I think it will in part. That poses a threat to the outsourcing companies like Infosys and TCS here. But Trump will get half of what he wants, because manufacturing will go back in some cases to the US, but the people who do it will be bots, not people. So the labor element, this will be capital-intensive manufacturing that migrates back. It will not be labor-intensive manufacturing.
Okay, you spoke about brands. So a quick question on brands. After all, Google, Amazon, and all were brands. They were brands that build businesses. Okay, so what happens as far as the Oppenheimer effect is concerned on marketing now?
Well, the big threat to long-term branding, and maybe I'm outstaying my welcome by saying this, I am not wholly convinced. I mean, I've had 50 years of looking at India and also China. Branding is important. It is the lifeblood, in my view and your view, because our livelihood depended on it, for the development of companies. I am not wholly convinced that either Chinese companies or Indian companies are willing to make the financial commitment to secure that. So that's one point. The second point is, unfortunately, people who run listed companies become absorbed with quarterly reporting. It's one of the things I agree with President Trump on. We probably should get rid of quarterly reporting. If you're private equity, which is hugely important in the US economy and the UK and European economies, and will become more important here, the average hold period is 5 years, so inevitably it's short to medium term. And the third thing is, if you're venture capital, the first question you ask is, how do I exit, rather than how do I enter? So everything is tending to become short-term. Put on top of that the volatility that we see because of technological development, which is absolutely huge. I mean, I was in Australia recently, and I was very struck. Had a dozen people around a table, all about 30, 35. They'd all done about 3 or 4 entries and exits. My dad said to me, find an industry that you enjoy, find a company you enjoy. If you fancy doing something when you're 40, midway in his mind between when you started and when you retired, if you go and build your own business. But his philosophy was around long-term branding and long-term brand building. Unfortunately, I think that is ancient thinking. I think the volatility is so huge that is coming under attack. And what we see with clients, and AI is driving this, by the way, we're seeing a tremendous focus on short-term brand performance, on activation and performance and promotion and sales. And ironically, when I was debating with one of the cloud companies where we should send our surveys for, the survey we wanted to do was what percentage of your media cost is create costs, because AI is having a huge impact on lowering create costs. I discussed with the CEO of the company, of the cloud company, where should we send the questionnaire to? We said CMOs, no. CIOs, no. CFOs, yes. Because the driver increasingly inside companies is the CFO for performance. And one other thing I would say on AI, we have not seen wholesale adoption of AI at scale except in two verticals. One is in autos and one is in financial services. Why? Because there's economic pressure from outside, from Chinese AVs and Chinese EVs. BYD can produce an AV for $10,000 with Gaudzai or an EV for $25,000. Even Musk is moving away to robots in a way from EVs and AVs. And in financial services, the tech platforms, you see it here in India, the fintech platforms are disintermediating, disrupting the banks and traditional services. So in my view, really, AI adoption is only going to come when the chill economic winds blow and the demand for efficiency will be high. AI is not about technological change. It's about workflow, plotting and improvement, and it's about change management. And turkeys don't vote for Christmas, if you get my drift. And in order to get change, you need an external force to push.
Perfect. That brings me to my last question, since the buzzer's just gone. Let's come to Brand India. You spoke highly about how it's been built under Prime Minister Modi and everybody else and the committee. Now, how should Brand India be positioned in the future? Is it a manufacturing hub? Is it a hub for AI? Is it a service provider? Because the digital leapfrog has happened immensely in India too.
Yeah, well, India, I think, is in a superb position. It has leadership. It has a strategy built around not only manufacturing, but technology leadership as well. And it has the structure in order to get things done. There are three things I think you have to think about as a firm or as a country, and that is leadership, strategy, and structure. Your own firm is going through, or ex-firm, is going through massive restructuring. I think to be controversial that you've got it wrong, not you personally, but your firm, because I think you put discipline first, and then client, and then geography, or geography and then client. What you've got to do is put geography first, then you put client, and then you put capability. So I think those three things, strategy, structure, and leadership, are the three things. And India has all in spades. So it's India's to win.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much.